present. But if you would rather not, you don't need to turn on your camera, of course. The recording is just going to be posted on our social so that people can tune in and learn about Sumi-e painting. Great. Okay, so your space is clear, you're ready to paint. We've got paper towels, cup of water. Why don't you also grab some scissors in case you need to cut your paper down? We also need to protect our space. So for those of you who have joined, you can see that I have some paper here on the table. And so we want to make sure we protect your space with a placemat, newspaper, something extra. Again, I'm Kathy for those of you who are just joining, and I am excited to be painting with you today. And just a reminder that you want to clear your space so that you have plenty of painting room and get a smock on so we don't get any stains. You want some paper towels, a cup of water, and I would grab scissors so that you can cut down your paper. Okay, I'm gonna get started. So you can see in my workspace here, I've got this beautiful koi fish that we've got going on, and we are going to be painting this in honor of the new year. This fish symbolizes prosperity and luck, and so we are going to get to that. I've unpacked the kit here, and we have 3 different colors of Sumi ink, and I'm going to recommend that you just use one to start out because most of these paintings are done monotone, and that is just great to start out learning. You've got a calligraphy brush here, or a painting a brush, and you probably got a different size or so. You might not have exactly the same size as me, but we're going to be using that to paint. And then we've got these 3 little dishes here where we're going to be mixing paint as dark, medium, and light. And I will show you how to do that. And just a reminder that this is a meditative process. Perfection is not the way of the world here. And each stroke is done with intention. And so this fish, for instance, was created with, I'd say, about 7 strokes. And we're going to start out just playing a little bit. You got some rice paper in your kit as well. Rice paper is super thin and delicate and really soaks up that ink and that liquid. So it really travels when we go over it. And the Sumi ink is made out of soot and glue. So it is a very powerful, potent ink. And of course, we have our brush. So we're going to start out by measuring out our ink. I'm going to use black just for like contrast so you can really see, but feel free to choose orange or blue or something that you're excited about. And so what we want to do is we're going to make dark, mid-tone, and light. And with dark, I'm going to do 3 drops of paint. So the little dropper comes out here. We're going to do 1 drop, 2, 3, and that is just going to be pure ink. That's going to be the darkest color that we do to really draw out color. And then with the second one, we're just going to do 1 dropper, 1 full dropper of ink. And with that last one, we're going to try to do half a dropper. Now, of course, it's hard to see if it's half, but I would say just a couple little drops is good. I would say 2 drops. And then we're going to add our water. And so I would say with the mid-tone, that 1 dropper, you're going to put 1 teaspoon of water. And then with the lightest color, we're going to put 1 tablespoon of water. And this is going to give us three very different tones. Now's a good time to cut your paper if you're feeling like it's really long and you don't have a lot of room on your surface. Feel free to cut it down. And this paper, it's super thin, so we don't want to paint on top. We don't want the paper to be stacked because then you're just going to have a ton of paper that's been painted. So make sure that you're painting one piece of paper at a time. I'm going to move my paints off the paper and clear up my space a little bit more. Awesome. And I can see your chat. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. And I'm going to practice on a big sheet that I didn't cut down. It's important when we are learning something new that we feel like we can play, and making mistakes is just natural. So if you create something where you're like, that wasn't what I expected, that's totally a part of this. So let's start out by learning how to load up the brush. So we're gonna get our brush ready. And I like to wet it first just to see if there's any stray hairs. And if you have one long hair poking out of your brush, you can just sort of pluck it out. Although sometimes that can be nice for really intimate details. And now what we're gonna do is just dipping that brush. I would start out with the light color here. And we don't want a lot of dripping. So let's just use the brush against the side of the container here. And we can start out with thin lines. So for a thin line, you want to start with the brush at a 90-degree angle. So sort of straight down, and you want to let it flow. Do try some swirls. Maybe you press down a little bit more and discover that when you press down, you got that nice thick line. And when the brush starts to skip across the page, it means it needs more ink on it. So I'm going to dip again. And I'm just going to start to get into a flow where I explore making very delicate little lines, appreciating how the water flows through the paper, and just see how light you can touch. This is about pressure. And so with the lightest touch here, the ink begins to flow across the page. And maybe you're like, well, I want to know what the midtone is like. Well, let's skip over to the midtone now. We're going to dip the brush in here and try to get off those drips so it's saturated but not dripping. And let's try some lines with the midtone. And that's a nice strong color here. And I like to go through my other line. So I'm going to actually zoom in here so you can get a better view. Boop. Yeah. And it's what's really nice about working with watercolor or Sumi ink is that the colors flow together and it's so subtle. But when you slow down, you can really appreciate that. You can try some big bold lines too. So you can see how these thick lines happened from pressing down and pulling that brush across. And a key element of this style of painting is intention, committing to each stroke. Each stroke has purpose. I'm starting to fill up this part of the paper here. So I'm going to turn my paper around. Yeah. And I'm going to keep on playing. You can try to make a very tight curve. You can go quickly and then go slowly, and just noticing how that feels for you and what you prefer. Since we will be doing koi fish, I'm really doing some curves here that are going to eventually be mirrored in the way we're going to paint the fish's body and the fins. All right, and now I'm going to try the darkest color, and just going to dip my brush in. And this, you might have to refill this one. I've noticed that in my experience, sometimes we need to refill the darkest one. And that is a really deep black. And it is so satisfying to watch the ink saturate. So you can just try to do very thin lines, thicker, thickest. And as you're practicing, your body's going to start to remember these movements, and it'll be more natural as you play. Now I'm noticing I want a little more contrast here with my darkest color and my mid-tone. And so you can do this too if you want to start to play and concoct. I'm going to add a little more water to my mid-tone, just like half a tablespoon. And if you don't have measuring cups, you can just eyeball it. This is play. This is an experiment. So let's see, I added half a tablespoon. Still pretty powerful. I'm going to add more. So when you're playing and learning how to use your brush, also a great time to tinker with your ink. Yeah, that's better for me. Awesome. Feel free to drop in the chat if you want to share how practicing is going. But I'm about ready to demo painting a koi fish. Now you can see, good thing I protected my space because we got some mess underneath there. And I don't want that to bleed through onto my painting. So I'm going to just do a little bit of blotting with my paper towels, just clearing off any excess, any moisture. And I cut my paper down because I wanted a smaller sheet. And from my example here, you can see that we're going to start out with the body, and then we're going to add in fin and the base, and we're going to add some detail here. But you have enough paper in your kit that you can make a lot of different fish, and you actually can paint whatever you like if you start to feel inspired. So I'm going to clean off my brush now, just really do a little reset, and that's what those paper towels are for. Nice. And I'm wanting to put even a little more water in my mid-tone. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start out by making a comma. And to make that comma shape, I'm going to start the tail part here. I'm going to bring it down to a base here. So I got my tail, and then I'm going to press harder as I go down. And I'm using the mid-tone here. I'm just going to fill in here. Each stroke, purposeful. And I got my comma. I've got my little tail here, the body. And then when I'm adding some accentuation, some depth, I'm going to go with the darker color. And I'm going to add ink right here along the base. And that ink is just going to flow in and be really have a beautiful contrast there. And this is going to be my little fish's head. And that first flow is sort of like dramatic, but then it does sort of seep in over time as you continue your painting. I'm going to start also with the darkest color ink, and I'm going to do a little fin here, pressing hard and then being light as I flow out. And if your brush skips a little bit over the paper, that's kind of nice too, those wispy lines. And I'm going to go back to my mid-tone here and do the bottom fin. And that fin starts in the body and then super light, blows out. And oftentimes I've been painting and drawing my whole life. And oftentimes for that first part of the process. It's always like, what am I doing? I'm not sure about these strokes. And then as you start to work into it and just let go, I find that halfway through or closer to the end, I'm like, oh, I really enjoy what I'm doing. And you start to like what's going on. Now I want to give my fish some patterning on the outside here. So I'm going to do a dark line right on the edge where I can still see liquid. Maybe another extra. You can get kind of creative with this. You can add little dots. Why not? And I want my the tail. Fish, do fish have tails? The top fin to be my lightest color. So I'm going to dip in, remembering to get that excess little drops off so it's not too saturated. And then I'm going to just do some strokes here. And I can show you my example again here. We're just flowing, wiggling. Whoop, brush at the camera. Nice. What I really appreciate about Sumi-e painting is that the stroke that you lay down feels so satisfying and so definitive, but then as time passes, it changes a little bit. There is some extra bleed, there's some extra characteristics that flow through as you take your time with your painting. And so now with my fish, I see this really beautiful outline forming where the ink is pooling and not pooling. And I want to accentuate that a little bit. So I'm going to go in with the darkest color, load up, and I'm going to make some patterning on the tail. And I want to add even more contrast down here. Now fish have these little whiskers on them, and so I'm going to add that the tiniest little movement. And I'm actually going to dry off my brush for that. So I'm going to reset. Sometimes when you're switching between all these colors, if you're trying to have a little bit more of a controlled approach, you do want to clean the ink out of the brush so you can start fresh. You can say, okay, I'm using my mid-tone, or I'm using the darkest color, or I'm using my light tone. And I want to be using the darkest color, but I'm pretty out. So I'm going to add some more. Mhm. There we go. And now I'm going to load up just with pure ink, no water in here, because I want to do a little whisker. Try to have it be a little wisp. Yeah, there we go. And when I do my strokes, I like to move my hand, my whole arm and my hands. Instead of worrying, getting really sort of tense and close to my paper, I like to sort of feel more like I am doing a stroke with my whole body. That can be satisfying too. I'm just going to keep on making koi fish. So with this will be dry in about 10 to 15 minutes. And so I'm just going to set it aside to do that. And I'm going to keep going. So maybe you're still working on your first koi fish, or you're practicing, or you're doing something totally different with the ink. I would love to know or see. So if you do have anything that you would love to share, feel free to drop it in the chat. And here I go again. Now, I'm going to start this time with my lightest color. I want there to be more contrast with this one. And so I'm cleaning out my brush really well because my brush just had the darkest color in it. So I'm really agitating it in the water, and then I'm cleaning it off with my paper towel. And I'm starting fresh. So I'm going to load up with that light color. I'm going to mix it quite a bit here in case any of that ink settled. Then I'm going to take off all those extra drips. And then I'm going to do my comma shape, that body part of the koi. So we're going to go down and swoop. So swooping and pressing harder at the base. I'm just going to make mine a little bolder. You may have gotten like the full size brush, mid-size or smaller. I'm demoing with a slightly smaller brush. And as that water evaporates, then you start to see the lighter color form. Because I'm painting on top of paper bags, it gives it this much more contrasting look. And Sumi-e painting has roots in Zen Buddhism. And so this idea of paying attention and mindfulness as you go, each stroke is purposeful. And then appreciating and being present as your ink dries and the tones on your paper change color. Now I'm going to add the contrasting dark color. And just going to put the brush into the ink here, loading up. Now I'm going to add a dark line to the face. And that color is going to seep up. And I'm also going to do the top fin. I think the top fin is nice to do also in that full dark color. Pressing and then flowing out, going lighter as you get towards the end. So pressing and lightly flowing up. And if there's an unexpected wiggle or splotch, that's a part of your process. I also want to put some patterning here. So I'm going to load up a little more. Starting to get a little low again. I think I really like the darkest ink, so I use a lot of it. If you're finding you want to refill, go ahead and do that. You can also go wash out everything and try another color. I'm so curious about the orange. I haven't used the orange yet. So if anyone's using that, I would love to see. Okay, now I've loaded up with the darkest color and I'm going to add some patterning here, maybe a little squiggle, dot. Now I'm going to clean off my brush and reset a little bit here. I'm seeing that my water could really use a bit of a change. So if you are near a sink and you want to go dump out your water, you can totally do that. And as you're doing this, if you've noticed that you're hunching over a little bit or your shoulders are getting kind of tight, just try to take a breath and relax a little. Now, I'm wanting to do a mid-tone. I haven't done any mid-tones yet. We've done our lightest tone and our darkest tone. So a mid-tone is a good place to go. And I'm now going to do the other fin. that comes out. And I'm gonna do, gonna add some characteristics here. I started using the darkest color to give a little bit of extra character. You can also add some other strokes for movement. Maybe you like how the paint drags across when the brush is a little bit on the dry side. Gives the feeling of movement. Or maybe you prefer the billowing, watery flow of your lightest color. I really do like to stir it up quite a bit. Yeah, that's good. And we'll see how this, I wonder how close I can go without it touching, but maybe it bleeds into it. Okay. Approaching something new, if this is brand new for you, approaching something new with curiosity is just such a nice way to learn and to be more compassionate with yourself. And a great way to start the new year. And the Lunar New Year starts February 17th. So we are coming out of the year of the wood snake, which was a year of shedding and transformation and letting go. So we're still wrapping that. We're still in that. So if you're not feeling the new year, new me vibes, that's totally okay. We're still shedding and welcoming in the year of the horse, which is a lot of action and fire and passion. Once again, I'm out of the darkest ink, and I think I just really like that contrast. So I'm going to keep adding. And I'm going to keep going with the fish. I'm going to make another. I'm noticing that I tend to paint my fish a little too close to the top. I want to have more room for my tail. So with my next one, I'm going to change up how I do it. And that's the beauty of giving yourself a good amount of time to craft or make art is when you can try something multiple times. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves when we only have one, quote unquote, one shot. So here I go again. And again, resetting my brush. It's nice to just know that you're starting fresh. And when you are ready to clean up after this, you can just wash out your brush with water until that water runs clear. And you want to leave those brushes somewhere cool and sort of away from maybe tipping off a counter and falling on the ground. I see a question in the chat. Do you teach these classes on a regular basis or is this a one-off? So this is a community event where you've joined. We do them monthly. This Sumi Inc. is a class that Foodcraft offers. So if you're like, oh, I love this and I want to take a more interactive version of it and show the instructor my work and try again, you absolutely can sign up through Foodcraft. Cool. I'm gonna start again with my little comma. And I'm gonna make a smaller fish this time because I want more room for that plume at the top. So I'm gonna start actually, instead of up here, a couple inches down, and I'm gonna make the body a little more squat. Yeah, just a smaller bod so that we can really have the fins be the focal point with my little fish. Yes. I'm going to now switch over to my darkest color. You know, that's my favorite, the bold line. And I'm just going to add in a little stroke here at the base and a little one here at the top. And then I'm going to load up again and add my fin, pressing down and then going light so that it flows up, down and light. And I did like to speed up at the end because I like that little surprise that happens at the end of the stroke. Now I'm going to switch over to my mid-tone for that bottom fin and then the tail. Really cleaning off because this brush has all that dark color in it. And I want to truly do a mid-tone. Watercolor is also a very challenging art form, and part of that is controlling how much pigment you're using. So if you're not cleaning off your brush regularly, your mid-tone and your darkest color and your light tone is going to start to blend. The beauty of painting a koi fish is that there's just so many like flowing parts to this animal, and it's flowing through water. So your fish could be swimming any which way. It doesn't need to look exactly like mine or exactly like what you thought it would. I'm gonna load up again here, getting those extra drips off, and now I'm gonna do my tail, pressing down and flowing. So big bold line and then flowing up. Yeah. And I'm going to switch over and go back to my lightest color. I want there to be two different strokes. A big part of this practice also is slowing down to make your choices. In a world where we're just go, 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 crafting, painting, meditative art practices are a chance for you to stretch out time. Yeah, I want this one to have extra drama, the good kind of drama. Yeah. Now I'm wanting to do a little of my whiskers. Koi fish have these really cool whiskers. So I'm loading up with the darkest color here, and I'm just going to do the tiniest wisp. Well, it wasn't that tiny, but I guess I wanted it to be dramatic. Yes, I'm going to add a little more darkness here. I'm loving what happens as the ink dries. It's so satisfying if anyone else is enjoying that. I'm just going to add some more drama, some more definitive lines here. And then I kind of liked in my last one, I added some more lines. I just kind of want to do one. Yeah, I like that. And the way that I place that actually looks like the fin continuing. And I kind of like that. It's kind of mysterious. Your brain will start to create a story or patterns as it's looking at a very simple form. Maybe you could also take your brush when it's full of water and tap it a little bit. And then you've got some little spots that occur, almost like little bubbles the koi is dancing around in. Yeah. And look, if you just tap the brush down, those circle forms. Of course, you can really get into this and end up with a Jackson Pollock, but that's okay. You can play if you find a sensation that you're enjoying. That is being present with your process. Now, if you have a big paper still, maybe you have a big space where you're working, you can totally paint it on a big one. And maybe I'll end on that. We've got about 3 more minutes left together. And so I'm just going to do some big strokes here. And then I'll clue you into a couple exciting things happening at Food Craft. I'm going to do I'm going to move it diagonally a little bit here. And these inks will last a long time. If you want to do this again, you probably have plenty left over to keep painting. Just give them a little shake and store them somewhere cool. The shaking is for when you use them again. You don't really need to shake them when you put them away. Just trying to breathe a little bit more as you make. And maybe your koi fish starts to look like something else. You can just play. You can make an abstract work of art. You can, after 10 or 15 minutes, your work will dry. And if you want, you can weight it down a little bit, like maybe with books on all 4 corners so it doesn't curl as much. And then you could frame it. You could give it away as a gift. Now I'm just playing again. Because sometimes it's nice to cool down after you make art. You warm up, you cool down. Maybe there was a shape that you didn't get to make that you wanted to make, a circle, a square. Maybe you really like that splatter. Just appreciating your materials, appreciating your process. I did see there was a question in the chat earlier. If anyone else has any questions or comments, if you want to share how this process was for you, I would love to hear or see in the chat. And I'm going to go back and look at my favorite fish, which I would say was my last fish. I had a lot of fun with this one. If you fall in love with this process, there's many different color inks you can get. You could get a big brush, you could get itty bitty little brushes. But now that you have spent, if you keep painting, an hour exploring this form, you have all the tools you need to slow down and play. I'm going to give this one a little more whiskers while I still have the time. Boop. Thank you for being here. And we're just going to wrap up with a couple announcements in a couple minutes. So feel free to continue playing. Maybe you have a little signature you want to add to your work. You could come up with a symbol of your signature because I have quite a long name. So if I signed my full name, it would be a big blob. And you can see from my finished examples that you really start to see every little way that ink blends with itself or doesn't blend. Kind of like how you can see the paper through some of these strokes. Now again, with tidying up, Sumi-e ink does stain, so we do not want to get that everywhere. So feel free to fold up whatever you protected your surface with, recycle that. Awesome. It doesn't take a lot to totally change your tone. So this is my darkest color, my mid-tone, and my light tone. And I could keep adding water here, but it does settle down. So as you do this, if you really get into it and are taking a lot of time, you want to keep agitating the water so that the ink is evenly distributed in the water. Again, I am Kathy with Foodcraft, and you are at Sumi-e Ink Painting. And it's been so fun working with you. So thank you for spending some time with me. And I do have a couple little announcements. You are at a free workshop, and we've got more going on this year. So there are some more dates that I want to share with you. In February, we've got mochi dango and crispy dumplings in March, and then we've got Thai iced tea in April. So these are really fun events where you get to eat what you make, which we didn't do today. So you'll get to try all the different things that Foodcraft offers. These are complimentary, so sign up and carve out some time for yourself in 2026 to keep the flow going. Other Lunar New Year events, if you're super excited about that, we've got Good Luck Cookie Decorating, Lunar New Year Chocolate Truffle, those look delicious, and tea mocktails, combining some of my favorite drink options there. That looks so yummy. So you can sign up for those events, those workshops, and whatever you do, just take care of yourself and enjoy life because there's so much to explore. So thank you for being here. And I'm just going to leave those dates up there. And this was Foodcraft. Thank you for being here. Thanks, everyone. I enjoyed it too. Thank you. I'm glad you could relax. Thanks so much for joining me. And feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I'll be here for another like minute. Bye. Thanks for being here. If anyone wants to drop a picture of what they did in the chat, I want to see. Okay, bye everyone.